Now I will talk about critical discourse analysis and educational research, or in other words, we can say educational discourses related critical discourse analysis. Recently, we can see there is a shift towards constructive discourse analysis as compared to deconstructive discourse analysis in relation to educational studies or studies based on educational discourse. And in this regard, we can see a study by Rogers, which was conducted in 2016. She, with our colleagues, researched upon various educational related critical discourse studies from 2004 to 12 and found certain patterns in these studies. Their study also followed up 30 years research on educational discourses and came to certain conclusion. One of the very inspiring information which emerged from their study was that we are more towards the constructive or reconstructive turn of critical discourse analysis, which I will explain in a while. But I would just like to share that they searched 5 electronic databases for this study, which is a quite healthy data. And the era was from 2004 to 12. These databases included ARIC, Article First, Psych Info, MLA, and Web of Science. And the all we know all these sources are very popular ones. One of the very impressive features of this study, or one of the very inspiring finding of this study, which I take with some kind of happy note, that they found that recently there has been a shift towards reconstruction in educational discourses. By that means that people are now more positively tempted towards generating constructive discourses in which they propose various strategies to make educational discourse healthy, as compared to deconstructive discourse in which we just point out discourse analysis in which we just point out what kind of power exploitations, manipulations, racial discriminations have been enacted in these discourses. So that's the important. We do not deny that, but we always have to provide the alternatives also. And in this way, this is a very healthy shift that now people are thinking about providing alternative. It's not a very healthy sign that you keep on pointing out unhealthy things in a society without providing an alternative healthy things. So these constructive discourses, especially, I always say that if any field needs constructive discourses, education probably would come on the top. This needs these constructive discourses more often than any other field. So uh, we can assume and we can be happy about it that now recently researchers in the field of critical discourse analysis are providing constructive solutions. According to this research by Rogers and her colleagues, we can see that 66% of the recent studies, focus on some element of reconstruction. By that we mean they may not entirely be conducted with a reconstructive agenda, or they were there to produce some kind of positive discourse only. Rather, they may be conducted with another agenda, but they had some serious element of reconstruction embedded with them. So they produced some kind of positive discourse where power was generative, where things could be shaped out well, as compared to a situation in which we were all for criticizing or being critical about the exploitations. 34% of 242 articles were about discourses which would be talking about sustaining inequalities, or in other words, deconstructive approach, which was I was just referring to. Overall, critical discourse analysis in relation to education discourses have been conducted in all parts of the world and have used all kinds of methodologies within the domain of critical discourse analysis. and they have dealt with all kinds of themes also. Uh, as I said, overall, if we see, still there would be large number of studies which would talk about inequalities in the societies, how uh, some kind some kind of uh, uh, some kind of elements or agendas are enacted through the educational discourse, especially discourses in textbooks and other forms of educational documents. So this has been the prime focus of these studies so far. But as I said a while ago, that we are now shifting towards constructive discourse also. So we need to see these studies from all aspects now, and we have already, since we have already published research for this purpose, so this can be a relatively easy task now. I would just refer to one study which focused on by Young 2019, which focused on children's periodical, and it looked into positive and inspirational educational materials. This study focused on Foucault's, Von Dijk's, and Hucken's frameworks, and examined the counter narratives or folk literacies that seek to educate within a certain cultural or educational context. And what they found out, her findings revealed how historical discourses of race, social class, and politics were infused throughout the periodical in the words, images, and layout of the text. And I mean, though apparently this has to be a very positive discourse talking about certain healthy trends, customs, norms in a society, these periodicals for the children should be very healthy because they are dealing with very sensitive creatures, the little kids. But studies surprisingly have shown that even these books are not free from power inequalities, from some kind of social injustices, and the enactment of some kind of social roles. For example, in other studies, I can remember one of the studies in Pakistani context which found that these discourses in children's storybooks were gendered. They would reflect a patriarchal society. They would reflect on male domination in Pakistani society. Anyhow, you probably would have to read this further in order to agree or disagree with this. But this kind of studies do exist and can be very useful in future also. She also showed how counter narrative within the text focus on the development of racial pride, language, and culture among the learners. And similarly, there have been textbooks, there have been educational discourses which focus on promoting some kind of nationalism, some kinds of superiority feeling as compared to other nations, and sometimes this may be fake even, or maybe exaggerated on a certain plane. But this kind of tendencies in educational discourses do exist, and there is always one day argued that CDA can help to examine how the interplay between knowledge and structure reveals how people make sense of phrase, how opinions and memory are biased, and how discourse produces domination. And educational discourse can be a very important site for this also. So we cannot ignore the deconstructive aspect of critical discourse analysis in relation to educational discourses also, because this can be a powerful site for framing or reframing the minds of future generations, because you can introduce them to such discourses in their schools, in their colleges or universities, which would frame their mind for future. And many societies, especially ideological societies, uh, present and further their ideologies such textbooks, and sometimes things are molded, historical things are molded for such purposes also. So a critical discourse analyst needs to look at it from a very critical eye. Ayers also conducted research on community college in USA and claimed that the college is a site for reproducing class inequalities that structure life in late capitalism. So this is another example. to sum up, we can say that critical discourse analysis can be a very healthy, effective tool for not only understanding but also investigating discourses about educational policies, and about educational institutions. And this can be a seriously good contribution to a society.